Hi, everyone. My name is Lena. I'm 28 years old and a graphic designer. This is the story of how my perfect romance unraveled into a nightmare. It all began last spring at the TechVision conference in Chicago. I was presenting my design portfolio, showcasing my unique fusion of traditional art and digital media. That's when I noticed him, a tall, charming man in the audience who seemed captivated by my work. After the session, he approached me, his blue eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Your work is incredible," he said. "The way you blend traditional and digital techniques is unlike anything I've ever seen." That was James. My heart fluttered as we exchanged numbers, and by the following week, we were meeting for morning coffee dates before work. James was everything I thought I wanted: successful, attentive, and so understanding. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he'd say, and I believed him. 3 months into our relationship, James introduced me to his family. His sister, Sarah, was intense, to say the least. "James tells me everything about you," she said, her piercing gaze making me feel like a specimen under a microscope. Her husband, Mike, was quieter, simply nodding along to whatever Sarah said. "We're incredibly close," James explained. "Sarah practically raised me after our dad passed away." Then there was Barbara, their mother, who had an unsettling habit of comparing me to James' ex-girlfriends. "You're much more suitable than the others," she'd remark, her tone making it clear that I was being evaluated. My best friend, Diane, noticed red flags before I did. "Don't you think it's strange how he checks your location so often?" she asked over coffee one day. "He's just protective," I replied, brushing off her concerns. "He worries about me." But things took a darker turn as time went on. James proposed after a year of dating, and the wedding, well, it was everything Sarah wanted it to be. Looking back, I realize now how much control she had over every detail of our lives. "We should live closer to Sarah," James suggested shortly after the honeymoon. "She knows all the best neighborhoods and schools." Even when I planned a simple dinner with Diane, James would find a way to dissuade me. "Baby, you've been so tired lately. Why don't we just stay in? Besides, Sarah's coming over." Then came the news that changed everything. I was pregnant. Overwhelmed with joy, I took 3 tests just to be sure. James seemed thrilled, but Sarah's reaction was off. "You need to be extremely careful," she said, gripping my arm a little too tightly. "Our family has a history of complicated pregnancies. Dr. Thompson will oversee everything to make sure it goes smoothly." Dr. Thompson, the family doctor, had always been unnervingly close to Sarah. I'd even caught them holding hands once when they thought no one was looking. But I was too excited about the baby to dwell on it, too blind to notice the exchanged glances or how James' reassuring words felt hollow. "We'll take really good care of you," James said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "You won't have to worry about a thing." Things spiraled further when Sarah received devastating news: she was infertile. I overheard her crying in the kitchen one morning, confiding in Dr. Thompson. "It's not fair," she sobbed. "I'll never have my own baby." After that, Sarah became obsessed with my pregnancy. She'd show up unannounced, placing her hands on my belly without asking. "This baby will be so special to our family," she'd whisper with an unsettling intensity. James's behavior shifted too. One morning, he took my phone while I was in the shower. "The radiation isn't good for the baby," he said when I protested. "Dr. Thompson agrees. We'll get you a landline instead." Then came my work. "Honey, about your job," James began cautiously. "Dr. Thompson thinks the stress could harm the baby. You don't need to work. We can afford for you to stay home." Bit by bit, my world grew smaller, until I could barely recognize the life I once had. If only I had realized sooner what they meant by taking care of me. "But I love my job," I argued. "I need to talk to Diane about all this." James's face darkened. "Diane doesn't understand our family dynamics. Besides, Dr. Thompson strongly recommends limiting outside contact to prevent infections." Dr. Thompson backed him up, as always, with medical jargon I couldn't refute. "Your pregnancy is extremely delicate," he explained during one of his home visits. "Complete bed rest and isolation are necessary." Sarah, of course, stepped in to help. She took over everything, spending hours in the nursery. "The crib should face east for better energy," she declared one day. When I disagreed, she snapped, "I've researched this extensively. I know what's best." Barbara chimed in during her frequent visits, always praising their controlling behavior. "You're so blessed to have such a devoted family," she cooed. "When I was pregnant, I had to do everything myself. But something was wrong. After taking my prenatal vitamins, I started feeling strange, exhausted all the time. Why am I so sleepy?" I asked during a checkup. "Perfectly normal," Dr. Thompson assured me. "Pregnancy affects everyone differently." Then, one morning, I overheard a whispered conversation between Sarah and James outside my bedroom door. "The nursery at my house is almost ready," Sarah said softly. "Are you sure about this?" James sounded hesitant. "It's for the best. She's clearly not stable enough to handle motherhood." My blood ran cold. I felt trapped in my own home. Security cameras appeared for my safety. The windows were child-locked to prevent accidents. Even my food was strictly monitored. "Everything must be organic and prepared properly," Sarah insisted, throwing away snacks I'd hidden. When I tried to make a call on the landline, I discovered it was rigged to connect only to family. "See how much we care about you," Barbara said smugly. Most women would kill for this kind of attention. The drowsiness worsened. Sometimes, I'd wake up without remembering falling asleep, only to find Sarah hovering over me, measuring my belly or rummaging through my belongings. "Just checking on my favorite sister-in-law," she'd say with a saccharine smile. I knew something was terribly wrong, but in my drugged state, I could barely think straight. I needed help, but who could I trust when my entire world had become a carefully constructed prison? Then, during one of Sarah's obsessive cleaning sessions, she got called away for an emergency at work. In her haste, she left behind her designer bag, something she always kept close. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, I found a leather-bound diary. What I read made my blood turn to ice. "Plan is proceeding perfectly," one entry read. "James agrees it's best for everyone. After the birth, we'll prove she's unstable. Dr. T will testify about her paranoid behavior and depression. The baby will be safer with me." Another entry detailed fabricated symptoms, dates, and even photos of a psychiatric facility they had already chosen. "Met with Dr. Thompson today. He'll adjust her medical records to show a history of mental instability. Cost us a pretty penny, but worth it. He's always had a soft spot for me." The sound of a car pulling up jolted me. I quickly returned the diary and rushed back to bed. Moments later, Sarah burst in, her smile as fake as ever. "Sorry about that emergency. Now, where were we with the nursery plans?" I pretended everything was normal, even as my world crumbled around me. The next day, during Barbara's usual 15-minute bathroom break, I heard a faint tap at my window. "Diane?" I whispered, barely believing my eyes. She slipped inside. "I've been watching the house for weeks," she said. "I knew something was wrong when you stopped answering calls." Diane had brought a burner phone and tiny cameras. "We need proof," she said, planting them around the house, especially in the kitchen where my food and vitamins were prepared. That night, the cameras captured James crushing pills into my prenatal vitamins while Sarah supervised. "Mom's got the paperwork ready," James said. "After the birth, everything needs to move quickly. Dr. Thompson says we can claim postpartum psychosis," Sarah replied. "No one will question it." Through the burner phone, Diane helped me gather more evidence. We recorded conversations, documented my confinement, and photographed the tampered vitamins. "They're using benzodiazepines," Diane revealed after sneaking a sample to her pharmacist friend. "That's why you're always drowsy." The deeper we dug, the darker it got. Barbara had been feeding my family lies, telling them I needed space during a difficult pregnancy. But now I had a lifeline, and with Diane by my side, I vowed to expose the truth and reclaim my life, no matter the cost. Dr. Thompson had an entire file of falsified medical records prepared. Even Mike, Sarah's husband, was in on it. There were texts about him drafting the legal documents for my institutionalization. "We need to get you out," Diane said during another secret visit. "But we have to be smart about it. They're all in on this. Sarah, James, your mother-in-law, even the doctor." I rubbed my growing belly, feeling the baby kick. "They want to steal my baby," I whispered. "My own husband. How could he do this?" "Don't worry," Diane squeezed my hand, her voice firm. "I've got a plan, but we'll only get one shot at this." We waited until their weekly family breakfast, an hours-long tradition at Sarah's house where they gathered to discuss their sinister plans for my baby. The irony wasn't lost on me as Diane whispered, "They're all there. The security camera confirms it. Let's move." My hands trembled as we drove to Mount Sinai Hospital. The new doctors were horrified by my test results. "These drug levels," the emergency physician said, shaking his head as he documented everything. "Someone has been systematically sedating you. This is criminal." I called Anna, my old college roommate turned investigative journalist. When she saw the evidence, she said, "This is bigger than a family dispute. This is a scandal." The story broke like a tsunami. The headline read, "Prominent Doctor and Family's Sinister Plot to Steal Unborn Child." National news stations picked it up, but that was just the beginning. "Mrs. Anderson, we need to talk about your husband's financial activities," a corporate investigator told me at the safe house. It turned out James had been embezzling company funds for years, funneling money into Sarah's endless IVF treatments. He's stolen nearly $500,000, the investigator explained. "We're pressing charges." Sarah's world imploded next. Her fraudulent insurance claims for non-existent fertility treatments came to light. During her very public divorce proceedings, she screamed at Mike, "I did it for us. Everything I did was to give us a family." The day Dr. Thompson was arrested, my water broke. Diane stayed by my side through 16 grueling hours of labor. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing her in my arms. "Hello, Emma," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "You're safe now." The sentencing hearings followed. James received 12 years for embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. Dr. Thompson lost his medical license and was sentenced to 8 years. Sarah received 5 years for insurance fraud and conspiracy. During the final hearing, I addressed the court. "They tried to steal not just my baby, but my sanity and my life. Sometimes the best revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. It's rising so far above them that their schemes seem small and pathetic in comparison." Today, Emma and I are thriving. She's proof that love doesn't need control or manipulation, it just needs to be real. But I often wonder, what would you do if you discovered your spouse and their entire family were secretly drugging you and plotting to steal your child? Would you expose them immediately, risking that they destroy the evidence, or would you gather proof first, even if it meant enduring more abuse?